This video is sponsored by Launch Tabletop, a board game manufacturer with a print-on-demand service for designers and publishers. Another year almost over, and time to look back and highlight the most enjoyable gaming experiences I've had during the year. It's top 10 time once again. I'm Adam Porter, I'm a game designer from Wales, but for the purposes of this video, I'm a gamer. And this is a list of games which have brought me joy. It's an annual tradition of mine to kick off my list with a quick rundown of my 10 favourite games from the previous 5 years, 2019 to 2023, though no 2023 games actually made that list. My goal here is to give you a feel for my tastes and preferences and set the tone for my 2024 picks. At number 10 we have 2021's King Domino Origins, a standalone game in the popular series utilising familiar mechanisms from King Domino in a prehistoric setting, with 3 alternate modes of play with increasing complexity. This variation offers a satisfying middle ground between the very simple King Domino and the slightly bloated sequel Queen Domino. Number 9 is 2021's Ark Nova, a complex engine-building game about building the best zoo. The highlight of the game is the action selection mechanism, a fascinating decision space with lots of dilemmas around timing, maximising rewards and upgrades. It's a really solid game, deserving of much of the praise that it's received. And number 8 is 2019's Wingspan. This title took the gaming world by storm, and its popularity shows no sign of letting up. The combination of gorgeous artwork and outstanding components lifts the product enormously, but the central engine building system is strong too. It comes together wonderfully and it makes for a very appealing package. Number 7 is 2021's Zombie Teens Evolution, my favourite legacy experience so far. It's a cooperative game with a cute little emerging story about a team of teens and their dog fighting off zombies. There are an incredible number of new rules and modes of play to discover over the series of games, and it's endlessly replayable thereafter. The product design is immaculate. And number 6 is Pitch Out, an awesome little 2-player flicking game also from 2021. A really simple and accessible head-to-head with loads of special powers. A hugely underrated gem, though I've heard that a second expansion is forthcoming in 2025 and I'm excited to see what new options it brings. Number 5 is 2019's Undaunted Normandy. Now, I don't play many war-themed games, but this one really connected with me. I love the art style from Osprey and the clever combination of deck building with tactical movement and attacks. It's just perfectly realised. Number 4 was a sequel to one of my favourite games, Dominant Species. 2021's Marine Edition has a new twist on worker placement which totally changes the flow of the game while retaining the cutthroat, strategic, totally engaging gameplay of the brilliant original. And number 3 is Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, a 2022 remake of the role selection pirate game by Stonemaier Games. The gameplay is better than ever, with new card effects, variable scoring, and an improved system for breaking ties. 2019's Cartographers takes the number 2 spot, a perfect combination of polyomino placement and flip and write gameplay. To my mind, this is the best of the roll and write genre, with incredible variety, a touch of interaction, and the opportunity to really personalise your player sheets to create beautiful maps. And number 1 goes to 2019's Isle of Cats, a card drafting polyomino game where you pack cats together into a ship-shaped grid. A gorgeous production with really solid gameplay. But we're really here to talk about 2024, and the usual ground rules apply. I won't be featuring games in my top 10 which I designed myself, so my 2024 releases, Ballot Battle and Happy Hoppers, won't feature. You should probably know that I tend towards short, simple experiences, so there's not many heavy, high fantasy epics on here. This is a personal list, it's not an objective list of the best games of the year. Now, I don't worry too much about release dates. If the game became available to me in 2024, or indeed in 2023 because it was released at conventions or distributed in the UK for the first time, or remade from an older title, then it's eligible. All games on this list were purchased at retail, and as always, there are many wonderful games missing. I've played fewer games this year than usual, so this list is simply 10 games which I can wholeheartedly recommend, and it's not to be taken more seriously than that. So with all that said, let's kick off at number 10. and that's Farshore. Farshore is a re-implementation of Everdell set in a coastal region. On your turn, you can still place a worker to gather resources or spend those resources to place a card into your tableau. The cards still offer one-off bonuses, enduring abilities, new worker placement slots, endgame scoring and production facilities. So the game is still all about building an efficient engine. But one big difference is the presence of a boat for each player, which travels along the track, gathering points and resources when certain cards are played. There are minor tweaks to improve the Everdell system, stacking duplicate cards in a central display, limiting the number of times a critter can be placed into a construction for free, and action spaces which disappear as the game progresses. In all honesty, this is probably the best game on the list. But I'm not sure it deserves to be here at all, so that's why it gets the lowest spot. You see, Farshore is basically just Everdell again. Everdell is my favourite game, and Farshore is just as good, but it is just so similar, it's hard to consider it as a new game. There are clever tweaks which improve some aspects of gameplay, stacking the duplicate cards in the market or limiting the option to place critters into previously built constructions, and a new sailing track to consider which presents a few more choices. But the changes are minor. The artist has been changed from the incredible Andrew Bosley to the prolific and very talented Jackie Davis, but most players won't notice the transition. Now, I'm happy to own Farshore mainly because I substituted my original Everdell for the almighty complete collection, and the box is so massive with all the expansions included, it can be a chore to bring it to the table and get it all set up. So Farshore for me provides a more manageable dose of Everdell without the hassle of separating expansion content. For newcomers to the series deciding between Everdell and Farshore, I would advise picking based on which setting you prefer, woodland or seaside. And also whether you think you're likely to want expansions. There's a ton of content available for Everdell, but just the base box for Farshore. Number 9, Daruma. Darumas are Japanese idols, which when acquired are assigned a goal. And you do that by painting a pupil in the first eye, and the second pupil is completed when the goal is fulfilled. In the dice game Daruma, dice with the result of 1 are used as pupils to complete different Darumas. On your turn, you roll 8 dice and you place any 4s on the central tanuki, representing abundance. If you ever place a 4th die on the tanuki, your turn is over with no rewards. But if you roll more than 4 4s in a single roll, your luck is reversed and you gain a free Daruma from the deck for scoring. If you roll a 1, you must place it as a pupil on a Daruma and then take the associated action, re-rolling certain dice, adding or subtracting from dice results, or swapping Darumas in different players' scoring piles. If you roll anything other than a 1 or 4, you may discard 1 die to roll your other dice again. You can end your turn at any point and collect any Darumas with 2 pupils assigned for endgame scoring. The number of dice you have remaining dictates how far the round counter progresses, and landing the counter in certain spaces gives further bonuses. At the end of the game, you score points for Darumas matching those at the top of your secret objective card, and lose points for any matching the Daruma at the bottom of the card. Now, Daruma is one of those glorious little oddities that you only get to discover by attending international conventions. So I spotted the game at Essenspiel and I was attracted first by the presentation. I love the idea of using dice as eyes. I'm always on the lookout for fun, simple dice games in the vein of Picomino, Sushizok or Piraten Capern, and Daruma fits well into that niche. Now, it's very luck dependent, as you'd expect, but it's lively enough and simple enough with plenty of fun choices to keep everyone engaged. Number 8 is Magic Maze Tower. Now, Magic Maze Tower differs from its progenitor Magic Maze by removing time pressure and tasking players with solving predetermined puzzles, either solo or as a group, starting with the simplest tiles and working up in difficulty. When you've selected a grid, each of the hero pawns is placed on their corresponding space, and when playing as a group, each player has a control over a certain direction of movement, up, down, left or right. When playing solo, any piece can be moved at any time in any direction. And the goal is to get the pieces onto armoury spaces and then into the corresponding coloured exits. Often, doors block passages, and these can only be passed by a hero if another hero is standing on the key space matching the colour of the door. Now, some spaces have one-way arrows, limiting your movement to a single direction, and specific heroes have specific abilities. The elf can jump over other heroes. The dwarf is the only one who can pass through small gaps. The barbarian can toss a hero over trap spaces, and the mage can swap spaces with other heroes. A full game of Magic Maze Tower involves working through several quest tiles and then flipping them over and combining them to make a final larger quest. To make things harder, you're encouraged to limit communication between players, as in the original game. The chaotic, tense co-op game Magic Maze was one of my top picks in 2017, and since then I've dabbled a lot with solo puzzle games, especially during my time working on Quazzle, Zooligans and the Genius Gems for the Happy Puzzle Company. I haven't played Magic Maze Tower multiplayer, but I've enjoyed working through the solo challenges, and as with most games of this type, the puzzles start off really easy, but ramp up quickly, and by the time you're working on the first multi-tile puzzle, you'll already be facing quite a challenge, and there are lots of levels to get through. Number 7, MLEM, Space Agency. So in MLEM Space Agency, players take turns as commander of a space mission. They each load an astronaut onto the rocket, and then the commander rolls a handful of dice and decides which dice to use to move the rocket forwards. In order to progress, they need to roll one or more of the results showing above the current space. The used dice are discarded unless they have an afterburn icon. And when the mission lands on a moon or a planet space, the players can choose whether to disembark their astronaut or risk pressing ahead for greater rewards. If the commander ever rolls the dice and reveals no numbers matching their space, the mission fails and returns to the base. Each individual astronaut has a special ability, so players need to choose which astronaut goes into space when. One astronaut might score double if they disembark on a planet. Another can disembark even when a mission fails. Another causes the commander to lose a die when they disembark. Players score points for moons that they occupy, or having majorities on planets, and for completing objectives. Now, I'm a big Reiner Knizia fan, and I love the systems he comes up with for his dice games. I've already mentioned Picomino and Sushizok earlier in this video. MLEM has a bigger box and a massive playmat, but it's a very simple game at its core. The cat astronauts and bizarre title will be polarizing for players, but I enjoyed the offbeat humour in the game. The planets, shaped like balls of wool or goldfish bowls. The points tokens, shaped like cat toys. Sci-fi settings often take themselves very seriously, and they can be really dark in colour, if not in tone. Not so in MLEM. It's bright and it's welcoming, and that helps a lot. The gameplay is exciting. I particularly enjoy picking and using the astronaut powers on each turn. They're simple to remember, but different enough that they change up your strategy just a little on each new turn. The push your luck aspect isn't harsh, and I would have liked a little more incentive to challenge myself to reach the highest spaces on the board, a few more risks. But the area majority scoring of planets and the first come first serve scoring of the moons is interesting enough that it doesn't feel anticlimactic to step off that rocket at a lower level to secure a nice little pot of victory points. It's lively, it's interactive, and it's fun. I loved it. Number 6, Monkey Palace. In Monkey Palace, players add Lego arches to a central palace and then top them with decorative leaves. Adding arches and building higher on each turn generates monkey credits, which can be used to purchase cards to add to your player board. Now, these give you immediate rewards of more blocks, and sometimes regular rewards which you receive at the end of every turn, so you have more to work with, and you can reach higher on each turn. If you place a gold block, you can move the monkey to block other players from using a specific location, and at the end of the game, players score points from the cards they've collected throughout the game. Now, I'm a Lego fan, but I've run out of space to display massive Lego dioramas, so a boxed game which I can build as I play and then put away again is ideal for me. Monkey Palace looks great, and of course the component quality is outstanding. The game wouldn't work with any component other than Lego, and that's what makes this game special. It isn't a pre-existing game with Lego tacked on to increase sales, and it isn't a set of Lego with some rules thrown together to package it as a game. No, Monkey Palace is a product where the Lego system and modern board game mechanisms are completely integrated, and that's quite an achievement. The game is essentially abstract, and decisions aren't massively challenging, often relying on spatial awareness, spotting the best locations to build based on height, and the selection of blocks that you have available. but the ability to purchase cards from the central market and build a little engine generating more and more blocks as the game progresses gives the game a great sense of momentum, with the palace getting taller and taller as you play. It's a visual delight. One of my highlights of 2024 was working once again with my sponsor, Launch Tabletop. I've used their print-on-demand service to make my own prototype games many times over the last 2 years and made a number of videos about the process. Most recently exploring how I could lay out playing cards, rulebooks and boxes on Canva and then print them to a professional standard through Launch Tabletop's Launch Lab service. If you fancy doing the same, take a look at the tutorials on my channel. And if you do order from Launch Tabletop, make sure to use the code ADAMINWALES to receive a 20% discount off your order. Launch Tabletop deliver across the globe in a timely fashion with great communication, affordable prices and fantastic high quality components. So if you want to bring your prototype game to the next level, give Launch Tabletop a try. Number 5. Fairy Ring. In Fairy Ring, players build a collection of mushrooms in front of them. They do this with a pick and pass draft, selecting a card from their hand and passing the rest to their neighbour. The chosen card might introduce a new mushroom, or it might instead grow an existing one. The player's fairy then flies from mushroom to mushroom, travelling a number of cards as indicated on the card played. And if your fairy lands on one of your own mushrooms, you score points according to the conditions of the mushroom, and the taller the mushroom, the more you score. If your fairy lands on an opponent's mushroom, they score points instead, but you also score points if you have a matching mushroom in your own display. And at the end of the game, the player with the most points wins. Fairy Ring is a lavish production from Repos with gorgeous art and lovely acrylic fairy standees. The theme is brilliantly chosen. Fairies hopping around a circle of mushrooms is just adorable. It's lovely when the theme of a pick and pass drafting game complements the rotation of the cards. Sushi Go picked up on this by referencing the rotating display of dishes at sushi restaurants, and Fairy Ring references the very real phenomenon of groups of mushrooms emerging in circular patterns. The gameplay is similar to Sushi Go. You pick a card, pass the rest on, reveal your card, and see what happens. But it's fun trying to predict where your fairy will land and aiming to move them to just the right mushroom in an opponent's display to generate points for your own massive mushroom of the same colour. The game is full of positive interaction. You earn points when other players land on your own mushrooms, so you're always engaged in their turns as well as your own. And it has great momentum. As the mushrooms get taller, the point rewards get bigger too. Number 4 is Looot. In Looot, you represent a group of Vikings developing your own little fjord area. And on your turn, you place a Viking and take a reward. The Vikings must be placed adjacent to a longship or another Viking, and the reward is placed onto your own board wherever you like. Placing Vikings next to houses claims those tokens for yourself. Connecting watchtowers gives you those tokens, and placing large groups of Vikings next to castles brings them onto your board. At the end of your turn, you can also take a longship, which works like a little contract or objective. If you surround it on your own board with the right resources, you can flip it and boost your scoring for other items. Similarly, surrounding construction sites allows you to flip them to reveal point-scoring buildings. And at the end of the game, you score points for structures you've built and resources you've gathered according to the criteria that you've introduced to your own fjord with those longships. Now, I've never understood game titles where they cram in extra letters where they just don't belong. It just makes it harder to search for the game online or to remember how to spell it when writing captions for videos. Loot with 3 O's is so unnecessary. Is it an attempt to avoid comparison to Nitzia's classic card game Looot? Does it achieve that? I'm probably off topic a little here because that minor grievance doesn't actually affect my enjoyment of the game. I was drawn in, of course, by the gorgeous box cover. I'm a sucker for the art of Tokaido illustrator Nayard, and publisher Gigamic is usually a seal of quality. And designer Charles Chevalier is one half of the design team that created Abyss, one of my favourite games of all time. So Loot had everything going for it, and the gameplay delivered. It's simple and accessible, strategic but not dry. A few years ago, I enjoyed the puzzly tile laying of AEG's Calico, but I was frustrated by the influence of chance on the choices available each turn. I could only choose from the tiles which were pulled from the bag, so even though the tile placement puzzle was fun, it was hard to look ahead and strategize. Now Looot solves this by having all tiles except the longship objectives on display at all times, and you can pretty much always take any resource you need. There are loads available, but ideally you want to chain your Vikings together in such a way that you're not only gathering your required resource, but also picking up houses and watchtowers and castles along the way. And of course your opponents will get in the way of that with their own Viking placements. But there are always backup plans available. You always feel in control. This is a game which makes you feel clever. It's particularly satisfying taking just the tile you need, slotting it into your personal grid in just the right position to complete 2 or 3 objectives in a single move. Number 3 is Snack Rabbits. In Snack Rabbits there are fences number 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And on your turn you reveal 1 vegetable card and place it by the fence corresponding to the dice icon shown on the card. If the card has a sun on it, you reveal another card and you do the same. You then have a choice to make. You can either pick a fence and roll your rabbit die to try to equal or beat the number on the fence, or wait for a future turn and take an additional die to supplement your roll. If you do beat the number of the fence with 1 or more dice, your rabbit hops over and you collect all the vegetables in that space. Now if you have the most of any vegetable type at the game's end, you gain a number of points equal to the value of that vegetable. All other players gain 1 point per card of that vegetable type that they've collected. The player with the most points wins. In 2023, a low-profile dice game from Brett Gilbert and Trevor Benjamin was number 29 on my top 100 filler games. And that game was called Dice Heist, and it's a precursor to Snack Rabbits, featuring near identical rules but a different scoring system. I've had great success introducing Dice Heist to a variety of players. It has minimal rules but lots of exciting moments, crushing disappointments and epic turns where a player rolls a Hail Mary 6 result, gathering a stack of cards and changing the direction of the game. Now I've known Brett and Trevor for several years now, and I was excited chatting to them over dinner in Essen last year when they told me that Dice Heist was going to have a second life with Amigo Spieler, streamlined and reimagined. Now Dice Heist had a variety of scoring cards, so think Sushi Go with its diverse scoring options. Snack Rabbits reduces this to a single scoring system, and it's very simple and satisfying. I'm delighted to own both iterations of the game, but I think it's more likely that I'll be reaching for Snack Rabbits in the future. It's just a touch simpler to teach, but it offers all the same excitement of the original with a cute new setting. Number 2 is Thunder Road Vendetta. Thunder Road Vendetta is a violent road race in an apocalyptic world. At the start of a round you roll 4 movement dice, and on each turn assign a die to one of your vehicles, gaining as many moves as shown on the die. At the end of your turn you can shoot at any car directly in front of one of your own. You roll a shooting die and see if you hit. When your vehicle is shot or takes damage from a hazard, you draw a hazard token and apply its effect. And if a car enters a space with another car, it slams it. The slam and direction dice are rolled, and the result determines which car moves out the way and in what direction. Players manage a group of vehicles, 3 cars of variable sizes and 1 chopper, but they're more likely to be hit when they're shot at. Smaller cars are less good for slamming, but they're also less likely to be shot. Meanwhile, the chopper cannot be shot or slammed at all, and when a car takes its second damage token, it becomes inoperable, so it can't move, shoot or take additional damage. It can, however, be repaired and returned to the race by placing a die showing a 6 on the repair section of your command board. As soon as one player is eliminated, the tile currently at the front of the track is considered the final tile. A finish line is added to the board, and when a vehicle crosses it, the game ends. So the eliminated player's not waiting too long for the game to come to a conclusion. Now Thunder Road Vendetta is a remake of an MB Games original from the 1980s. Restoration games are the masters of this sort of reimagining, carefully reworking any outdated mechanisms while retaining the feel of the original. Now Thunder Road Vendetta feels very retro, with simple rules, fast-paced turns, elaborate production, and full of wild, chaotic dice rolls. But the modernisations prevent it from feeling unfair, overlong, or mean-spirited, and actually it ends up feeling fresh. A fast-paced theme deserves a rule set which gets out the way of itself, and that's absolutely the situation here. Thunder Road Vendetta keeps it light. No superfluous rules to slow things down. The game clips along at a pace, and it creates a wild, cinematic experience. Number 1 is Zoo Vadis. In Zoo Vadis, you control a group of animals trying to occupy the highest position on the zoo board. Your pieces start at the base of the board and must make deals to progress, gaining laurels along the way. On your turn, you can add an animal to the base of the board or advance one of your animals already on the board. But in order to do this, you must get agreement from the majority of the other animals in the same exhibit space as you. And in order to get this agreement, you might pay laurels or promise your own support for that player's future moves. There are also neutral animals, peacocks, who can always be bribed for a vote at a fixed cost. If you don't want to move your own animals, you can always move a peacock even without majority agreement, potentially freeing up space for your own animals or blocking spaces for opponents. And each animal type has their own beneficial special ability, but these abilities can't be used on your own pieces, they can only be used on other players' animals, so the abilities should be offered up as incentives for other players to give you their vote. When all spaces in the final exhibit are filled, the game ends and players count their laurels. The player with the most laurels wins. Zoo Vadis is an elaborate remake of an older Knizia game, Quo Vadis. But the updates make all the difference and lift the game from a forgettable little obscurity to a big box game with lavish production and genuinely novel gameplay. Quo Vadis was a game of pure negotiation, but Zoo Vadis ups the ante, introducing asymmetric special powers for the players, extra abilities to barter over, and the neutral pieces, the peacocks, ensure that there's plenty of competition for spaces at all player counts. The zoo theme doesn't really make any sense, but Zoo Vadis gets away with it because of the whimsical presentation and deluxe components. With vast numbers of games releasing each year, it's surprising that there are very few negotiation games being produced. And for me, Zoo Vadis has instantly leapt to the top of the pile. Despite fewer gaming opportunities personally, I felt a bit more excited about the new games I played in 2024 compared to the previous year. I guess we're now seeing games being released which were licensed after the pandemic hiatus. As publishers opened up again and cleared their backlogs, I can only imagine they were presented with a wealth of high-quality prototypes, games which designers held back during those early lockdowns by choice or by necessity. That said, 5 of the games on my list are remakes of older games. I don't know whether that reflects a trend in the industry, publishers playing it safe perhaps, or whether it just reflects my own personal preferences. I do enjoy revisiting games that I've enjoyed in the past, with new additions and altered rule sets, or aesthetic overhauls reigniting my interest. So thank you for supporting my channel once again this year. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my picks and your own favourite games of 2024 in the comments. Until next time, all the best.